I have a very relevant question to ask you guys. Is it better to be really good at a couple things or just pretty good at a whole bunch of things? Like, which one would you prefer? And I ask this because it's incredibly relevant to this game, the Plucky Squire. You see, there's so much about this game that I truly do love, and I do not want to come at it from a negative perspective. But there are some negative things to talk about with this game. And just to be clear, I'm not nitpicking, I'm not hating. Nobody was more excited for this game than I am, and I still will tell you that I truly do love this game, but there are just some of those nagging things that I think deserve discussion. Anyway, before we get into this, please hit that like and subscribe button. Help get the channel to 2,000 subs before 2025, and you'll be entered in for your chance to support a very mediocre gaming YouTuber. But anyway, let's get on to the Plucky Squire. So let's just start with a few of the good things. And number one has got to be the art style, the graphics. This game looks incredibly impressive, even when it's kind of dulled down, if you will. Is that there are really three different art styles going on. There's this over-the-top view that happens while you're in the book. If you know what I'm talking about, I'll get into that here soon. The other aspects are like this 2D side-scrolling view, which, believe it or not, there is a different art style between those two. And then there's the incredibly impressive 3D, where you're out of the book, and everything is much more realistic, and you basically are in real life. And what I mean by this is in this game, you are a character in a book. You find this out relatively early, as you're given the ability to actually jump out of the book. And when you jump out of the book, the world goes into 3D. It's realistic. From a visual perspective, this looks amazing, and honestly, it's not jarring like you would think it would be when you go between almost this storybook art style to almost this like realistic 3D. And yeah, instead of it being jarring, it actually comes together quite well. And personally, I think it's really important that they nailed that transition, because if they didn't, I think it would take you out of the game. It's not the only thing about the art style that's impressive though, because while the characters are a little bit simplistic, they're also very lifelike. The basic characters that you see in the game, they just feel lifelike. I don't know how, and I do know that some of that really is attributed to the writing and the character makeup. And the main story of this game starts with the lead character, Jot. He is basically the hero, the renowned hero of this entire environment, if you will. I was going to say book, but they don't really know it's a book at the time. But anyway, he discusses how he goes on these different adventures and always beats the bad guys, and then he comes home and journals about it. Well, it just so happens that these all make for a very interesting storybook, or a very fun storybook. There is another individual, one named Humbrug, that actually knows that this is also a story. And he's tired of it. He wants to ruin the whole thing so that he can destroy the book, destroy the town, destroy everything. You see, essentially, if this book gets too boring, the owner of the book will simply put the book back in the shelf and completely forget about it, allowing this entire world to die. You see, Jot's job is not just to fight off bad guys. No, it's to create and star in these big, exciting adventures, so that when the owner of the book goes back to the book, they're always entertained by another one of Jot's exploits as he goes and fights another big bad monster. There's always something to keep that kid interested in the book. Well, for some reason, our evil sorcerer, or evil wizard Humbug, does not like this, and he's fed up with it. He's tired of it. He's tired of Jot. He's tired of this whole thing. So he wants to completely ruin it, and he is one of the few that actually knows that you can jump out of the book, that this isn't just their reality, there is a reality outside of the book. Although, thankfully, for Jot and for us as playing as Jot, we're not the only ones. There's also a very good friend of ours by the name of Moonbeard, who is arguably the best character in the game. He advises us on the best way to use our powers to get out of the book, and just in every way possible. This dude comes in clutch so often, not just for helping us, but actually just being a character. He's an incredibly hilarious yet super resourceful character. We're then also joined by two of our childhood friends who go with us on our new adventure to stop this evil wizard. Now, for the most part, though, this is the entire story. A few problems do arise here and there, but for the most part, it's just this one thing that they deal with. There's almost one note to the story. And I often happen to notice that actually the entire game is like that. Everything is sort of a one-note kind of thing, without there being too much complexity or depth in any one category. For instance, the combat. So there are different combat modes, and they're always keeping you on your toes when it comes to just different fighting styles that you find yourself in. There is a turn-based kind of mechanic. There's also a shoot 'em up kind of thing. There's also a mini game where you're kind of flinging things back and forth as a drummer, which is very interesting and cool. It's also one of Jot's friends, but the point is they do mix things up. But even though they do mix things up, they're not very complex. They're not very layered. It's just that one thing. The basic combat for the entire game is essentially hack and slash. And yeah, there's a few moves that you can unlock, but for the most part, it's just button mashing. And that'll get you through the game. It's not even meant to be any more complex than that. And there was a lot of things like that with the game that I started noticing. For instance, like we were talking about with the story, the character development, there is hardly any. While I do find the concept really cool and interesting, and it's a fresh new idea, there's just not much more into it than that. Then, hey, we're in a book, this one evil dude is trying to ruin it, let's go stop him. And that's pretty much as complex as it really gets. Again, there is a few more things. I don't want to ruin everything, but I'm just saying, as a person that's beat the game, it doesn't go that much deeper. And when I look back at all of the other properties of the game, it's kind of the same thing. One thing that I was impressed by, though, I have to say, is level design. Level design did add to puzzles. Now, the puzzles themselves are relatively simple, and I don't think anyone's going to have much of a problem figuring them out, as I didn't really have a problem figuring them out, and I'm a moron. I've stated that many times. So the fact that I could figure it out, I think most people are going to be alright. But you literally are taking things out of the box, or out of the book, if you will, to try to figure out how to solve some of these puzzles. And a lot of that does really come down on level design. And I do think that that is one of the shining peaks of the game, but it is still kind of the same thing, if you will. Most of the puzzles have to do with you interacting with the book in some way. And of course they would, because let's be honest, that's the whole mechanic of the game, but it's just that one mechanic. There isn't a whole lot of other things that's built into it. And I did struggle with this quite a bit because, I gotta be honest, when I was breaking this down for a review, I noticed that most of the categories of the game did not score that great because of their lack of depth. I mean, what score would you give combat if it's just hack and slash? I mean, yeah, there is different types of combat, but even those, like when you do the shoot 'em up or whenever you do the drumming type thing or whatever, it's not much more in depth than what it is on the surface. So what score would you give that, even if you're trying to be generous? And that's the same thing with the story. Yeah, it's a really cool idea, but how's the dialogue? It's okay. Some of it's pretty funny, most of it being from Moonbeard's perspective. What about the other character-to-character dialogue? Not really. They don't even really talk that much between each other. Yeah, there's a little bit, but nothing that's incredibly awakening like Cricket or some of the other RPGs I've played even recently. So when it comes to story and writing, I still couldn't give this game like a really high score. The only real opportunity for a high score would be level design and puzzles, and I guess in some ways that would be gameplay. Now, yeah, that is probably the best part of the game. Also music. The music is really, really good too. But my point is even coming through all of that, I kind of discovered something else though. And that is, I think this is a situation where the game itself maybe does have single note components, but when you bring it together, it's an amazingly beautiful song. So while you might do your calculations and say, oh, this game's like a 7.8 or an 8.2 just because of how each individual thing about the game ranks, for me, it's the whole, the collective that actually makes this game so great. And honestly, for me, it's a 9 out of 10. But I don't know, I'm curious what your thoughts are. Is my thought process wrong? The reason why I got there was just because when I did the math on everything, it turned into like a 7.5 in my scoring. And I was like, no, this is not a 7.5 game. I don't know. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Anything and everything in the comment section is much appreciated. I would advise picking this one up for sure. Like I said, it's just great. Yeah, it's not super complex, but it's really fun. And it's an incredibly enjoyable experience. But anything and everything in the comment section, much appreciated. I love each and every one of you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.